What is occupational therapy? The question that strikes fear into students and clinicians alike. And why do we have so much trouble describing our profession? Some of us have been doing it for years, yet it still is very difficult. Given that this is OT month, this is a topic that I wanted to dive into and explore for you guys. So sit back and enjoy. If you're interested in occupational therapy, this is the place for you. This show aims to explore our profession by sharing who we are and what we do. Because for us, occupational therapy is more than just a job. Hi, I'm Brock, and welcome to OT for Life. We get you back doing what you want and need to do. We make sure that you are able to get out of hospital as soon as possible safely. We get you to a place where you're able to safely live independently. We get you independence post some kind of illness, injury, or other event. Now, because this is OT for Life, you guys are probably assuming that I'm talking about occupational therapy. And that's the problem. Those descriptions could be assigned to almost any health profession. They're so general. A doctor helps you get out of hospital as quickly as possible and get home. Your pharmacist can help you get back doing to the things that you want and need to do. The issue with trying to describe our profession using some of these examples, I'm sure many of you have heard them 1,000 times over from different people, but the issue is they don't actually say what we do, how we do those things. They're so generalized that it doesn't give you any indication of what an occupational therapist is, let alone what an occupational therapist does. I want to unpack some of the more common explanations or elevator speeches, as they're commonly known nowadays, and try and get us to really reflect and have a think about how we are talking about occupational therapy. So this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I have done episodes on this before. I have made posts on this before. I have engaged in umpteenth conversations online in a whole variety of different occupational therapy interest groups. And I'm still astounded in seeing, mainly from some of those conversations, the different ways that people still insist on explaining occupational therapy. The very first thing I would like to address is the fact that many people seem to view having to explain occupational therapy as a chore, as a task, as something that's extra on top of what we already do, that's annoying, it's frustrating, why can't anyone just already know what we do, etc., etc. I get to say to you that I believe getting to explain what occupational therapy is to people is an absolute privilege. The fact that no one, generally, the common perception is that no one knows what we do, but the fact that people have a limited understanding of occupational therapy means that we get to be the ones to shape their perception of the profession. No other health profession gets that. If you go and see a doctor, you already know, or you already have in your head what a doctor can and can't do. You already know roughly what the process of going to see them is going to be. The same with a physio, the same with a social worker, the same with a nurse. Those professions have been around long enough and have infiltrated the public perception long enough that what they do is somewhat commonplace. It's common knowledge. Even if that common knowledge isn't quite accurate, we are in the privileged position where we get to shape that common knowledge right now. This is the turning point for our profession. This next, I would say, 10-year period, we get to shape how the public perceives occupational therapy. I can tell you that the one way we are not going to do it is, one example I saw is, it's like PT but spelt differently. We are not going to be shaping any minds with a description like that. So I'm going to try and steer away of the complete outliers like that one and focus on some of the ones that you guys are probably more commonly seeing or hearing. Comparison to physiotherapy is probably one of the most common. I have been guilty of it when I was a new grad, or probably more so when I was a student, of comparing occupational therapy to physiotherapy, but not really being able to explain very well the difference. Like physiotherapy but different doesn't really give anyone a lot of information. The main contributor to the knowledge base in that sentence is physiotherapy, and that's what most people are going to be left with. And if they are, we're no closer to shaping what occupational therapy is. As an evolution on from that, I've seen people come up with, clever rhymes and poems and that kind of stuff, which again, on absolute surface value, seem really in depth and really deep and really meaningful. Things like, doctors give you life, OTs show you how to live it. Okay, that's cool. It would look great on a cat poster. Sounds really motivational. Makes us sound epic, but doesn't really give any information. And I would challenge the fact that in a lot of cases, OTs aren't showing people how to live their lives. That's not what we do at all. A topic for another day, but I think that OTs are overly obsessed with the concept of independence, which rules out a lot of other really valuable aspects of being a human. But that aside, going back to our little rhymes and poems and that kind of stuff, our motivational elevator speeches, as I might refer to them, it sounds impressive. If you said that to someone who had no idea what it is, they're still going to have no idea what it is. The reason it makes sense to us and the reason that it seems motivational to us is we already know what OT is. So as soon as those words are uttered, we have already got these synaptic links that fill in the gaps. Okay, in my head, when that's said, I can picture a doctor, doing doctor things, writing scripts, reading x-rays, etc., 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 and then the OT swans in and saves the day, teaching the person how to transfer on and off the toilet. Amazing. My brain fills in the gaps because I already have this background knowledge about what different professions do. If I said that exact same sentence to someone who had never even heard of occupational therapy, they're going to go, so you're like my mum? How does this work? What do you mean you're going to show me how to live life? This makes no sense. Please don't use those. There's not enough information in some of those things to actually give a very good explanation about what the profession does. Another one I've seen is that, to paraphrase, if you do it, we do it. Anything you do, we can help with. I call shenanigans on that one, for starters. There's a lot of things that people do that I would have no idea how to do, and would not be much help with if they needed help with it. So not a great explanation. The other thing that a lot of these, the main thing that a lot of these elevator speeches are missing is any reference to occupation. I think we can universally agree that occupation as a concept is the bit that we avoid because we feel that most people aren't going to understand it. How do we fix that? Well, I'm glad you asked. The one way that we can fix people not understanding what occupation means to an occupational therapist is to explain it to them, weirdly enough. Another really common thing that you're going to hear when people are trying to describe occupational therapy is they tend to use very specific practice examples as their definition. And it's generally, I would assume, from the practice area that they're currently working in. For example, they'll say, I do this during the day, and it's very a specific skill set to their area of practice, as opposed to trying to describe occupational therapy as a whole. I believe this to be the case, probably because that's what they know better. I think that's one of the other issues is we, as a profession, we often say that we have a marketing problem. We have a marketing problem. I don't think we have a marketing problem. I think we have an identity problem, which is different. So I think we are very adept at putting ourselves out there and marketing something. I think the lack of a cohesive cultural identity within the profession at the present moment in history means that we are, one, either marketing the wrong thing, or two, we're all marketing different things, which creates a not very cohesive definition for the general public. When I was talking earlier about us needing to explain occupation, I believe, and experientially in me having done this many times, describing occupation is almost like the perfect way to explain what we do as a profession, not just in our practice area. So a common definition or a common elevator speech, for lack of a better term, that I will often use looks at describing occupation as looking at the time. So when OTs talk about occupation, we are talking about the things that occupy your time, as opposed to any other definition that some people might use. What I've found in my experience is the definition of occupying of time is really easy for Gen Pop to actually get their head around, mainly because it's probably been a longer definition of occupation than anything else. It's longer than us using occupation as a job or a career or anything like that. The idea of conceptualizing occupation as occupying your time is relatively easy for people to get their head around. If you think about all of the other not as accurate definitions or not as high quality definitions that you've seen or that we've talked about today, they all fit into us looking at what people occupy their time with. Whether we're looking at ADLs, independence, self-care, whatever it is that we are actually trying to explain to people, occupation of a person's time is, in my opinion, the most accurate definition of an occupational therapist's focus. As I said earlier, I try and avoid very specific practice examples because I find that they really narrow a person's ability to conceptualize what occupational therapy as a whole is. And I understand that that's obviously not ideal for everyone's convenience in trying to explain it. Like, it would be so much easier for me if I was to explain specifically what I do day to day in, say, a mental health practice, rather than trying to describe this massively broad and brilliant profession for what it is. I completely understand that. But the issue is when people then pass that information that we give to them on to other people. Your child sees an occupational therapist. That occupational therapist gives them a definition based on what they've done with their child. It might involve, balance and vestibular and postural strength and all this kind of stuff. Sensory issues even. That person then passes that information on to this other person. That person passes that information on to another person, all in general conversation, till, say, it gets to an older person who's seen an occupational therapist for mobility aids, and all of a sudden that person is left trying to work out, well, wait a minute, did I see an occupational therapist? I didn't get any of that stuff. Whereas if we'd presented occupational therapy as a whole, that simple definition of explaining what occupation is, what our root cause of the profession is, what our why is, what our unique difference is, covers all practice areas, all ages. Okay, yeah, for kids, this is the stuff that occupies their time. They play. They engage in school. They have to do handwriting. They have to be able to read. These are the things that occupy their time. Whereas for me, the elderly person, I need to be able to maintain my home and look after my pets. I need to be able to manage my money. I need to be able to do those bathroom transfers like we spoke about earlier. Those are the things that occupy my time. Now, I'm not saying that I've got like this one cure-all definition that everyone should be using, but I want people to be able to reflect a lot wider about how you are as individuals using your opportunity to share the profession and shape how the profession's viewed. One really interesting thing that I found in putting this episode together was, if you have a look at Google Trends, as most people just do for fun, I'm sure, there is a distinct spike about this time every single year for the term, what is occupational therapy? Why is that? Now, it could be because it's Occupational Therapy Month in the States. It could be, I don't know why. It could be 1,000 things. Around the AOTA conference, there's probably OT in the news a lot more for different things. But here's what I think. I do think it's because of OT month. But I actually think that spike is clinicians looking for ways to talk about what is OT. How do I describe it? Because a lot of the promotion during OT months, traditionally, has been around, get out, promote what we do, tell people about the profession, etc., etc. How do we do that? Bleh, not sure. Let's Google it and see what Google says. But if you look at the trends, there is a distinct wave, and the highest searches are traditionally around this time of year for what is occupational therapy. I found that really, really interesting. I do believe, like I said at the very start, that it's due to an identity and an identity issue within the profession as a whole. I believe that we have the tools at present to be able to remedy that. It's just a matter of organizing widely enough, which nowadays is worldwide, but widely enough to create a cultural change where people are comfortable using occupational language. There are still people, and I've had semi-educated discussions with people around the reasons that they don't like to use occupational language. I've had conversations with people who believe that we should rename the profession because nobody knows, and this is like almost a direct quote, nobody knows what occupation means but us. And I drastically call shenanigans on that because, believe it or not, that word and the concept of occupying time was around, I can't even express how many hundreds of years before the profession of occupational therapy. So, because it's not common vernacular now, doesn't mean that nobody knows. It means that we are terrible at actually keeping it at the forefront of our own language. We're terrible at using our own language. Can you imagine what would happen if doctors all of a sudden stopped using anatomical language? Or physios, or anyone else for that example, stopped using their own language? It would stop being front of mind for the general population. Guarantee it. An example from the present. Do you think anyone before December would have ever uttered the word COVID-19? No. But at present, it is front of mind. Everyone is having an opinion. Some people have a less than ideal relationship with the concept, which is causing a lot of freaking out and panic buying and all of that kind of stuff. And the way we are fixing that or attempting to fix that is by educating people, explaining to them the realities of COVID-19. We're changing the relationship that the general population has with not even the condition, the concept of the condition. And that's exactly what we need to do for OT. We need to change the relationship that people have with the concept of our profession if we want to advance at all, if we want to get further ahead. Now, I see this is starting to change. Slowly, very slowly. And I'm under no delusion that it's going to be fixed overnight or going to be fixed just because of this episode, etc. I believe there's been multiple paradigm shifts within the profession over the however many years it's been a profession in your country. I believe that at present we have therapists of varying age who were trained under various paradigms within the profession. I, in my experience, have experienced therapists who were trained on paradigms that have now shifted away from the main one that we are now being educated in, but have remained, I guess, kind of steadfast with some of the ideas and concepts from the previous paradigm. And given that that's who educates our students when they go on placement, those older ideas are being passed on to the next generation as well. I believe I was part of that. I believe the therapist that I was on placement with, or that I did my placement with, definitely imparted onto me some concepts, ideas, ways of looking at the world that were part of the previous paradigm of occupational therapy. I think we're almost hitting a tipping point where the majority of therapists will now be very much in that occupational paradigm again. I believe that with that tipping point will come more comfort in using occupational language. There's only one way to get more comfort in using occupational language, and that's to use occupational language. I believe that increase in comfort is going to come with a higher overall occupational science literacy within the profession. I honestly believe that those who are averse to using occupational language or wanting to change the name of the profession are doing so due to a low occupational science literacy. I've not met anyone that I've gone, this person has a full working understanding of occupational science, yet they still don't want to use occupational language. And I guarantee those people are out there, I just haven't come across them. And that's fine. Everyone's different. But the profession as a whole, we're looking at the occupational therapy profession worldwide needs to come together and foster this shared identity, this cultural identity of the profession. And as part of that, it's going to take using our occupational language, talking and working with people's occupational engagement, looking at occupational justice, examining occupational deprivation, explaining occupation. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to leave any comments you see on this post. Get in touch. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you have any other ideas around how we can talk about occupational therapy in a conducive way that is going to advance our amazing, amazing profession into the future. Hey, before you go, I just wanted to say thanks for listening to today's episode. If you want to further the discussion, go to our website, otforlife.com, and join our Facebook group. If you like us, here are 3 easy ways you can let us know. 1. Share our podcast with a friend, colleague, or anyone who's interested in occupational therapy. 2. Leave us a review on iTunes or anywhere this podcast is found. Or 3. Subscribe to us so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Thanks again, and we'll catch up with you next time, OT for Lifers.